Sometimes in order to live with integrity, in order to be faithful to who we really are and to be faithful to our true calling, we have to not conform to the rules of the game, and sometimes we have to change the game altogether. Forrest Church, the iconoclastic Unitarian minister from New York, died last week. Forrest Church was the son of former Senator Frank Church of Idaho. Not everybody liked Forrest Church. He decried the hijacking of the Bible, the hijacking of the American flag, and the hijacking of Jesus himself by the fundamentalists. And his life was very, very imperfect. He had an affair with one of his parishioners. He ended up getting divorced. He had a problem with alcohol. And finally, he died at 61 years old of cancer. Not everybody liked Forrest Church, the minister. But he lived with integrity. He played by his own rules. And these were the three of them, his three rules for living. Do what you can, want what you have, and be who you are. I like those rules. You see, it's funny, people like mavericks. They kind of idolize them, people who march to their own drumbeat, who play by their own rules. They like mavericks. They like the idea of mavericks until the mavericks don't march to their drumbeat and meet their expectations. After having been a minister for about 30 years, I've thought about this, and I figured out something between congregations and ministers. First of all, you have to realize that ministers quite often get paid to tell people things they don't want to hear. Isn't that funny? They get paid by their congregation so that they'll tell them things that they don't want to hear. Ultimately, we're called to serve the church, but ultimately we're employed by God. We're called to love and serve the church, but we're really seeking to please God. You see, it's great for the minister to get rave reviews from the congregation, but if he or she doesn't get good reviews from God, then the whole thing is just one big flop and one big failure. It's interesting, this congregation kind of has a history of maverick ministers. Lamar Kincaid, some of you knew who he was. He was a maverick. He marched to his own drumbeat. Jim Marsh was a trailblazer and a maverick. He marched to his own drumbeat. Usually marched about 10 minutes late. Never wore a watch. Charlie Shook, in his own quiet way, he's kind of a maverick. But all of these men gave their whole hearts to serving the church, but they never compromised their integrity and their true calling in life. Who am I trying to please? Who is my audience? Who's writing the script for my life as Ken Gill, the minister? And these questions are particularly important for ministers, but they're equally important for all of us. For all of us. Because sometimes it comes to a point in our lives when we have to say, I'm not going to play that game anymore. I'm not going to dance to that music anymore. You know, I once had a man come to me, a relatively young man in one of my congregations. He was in his 30s. He worked for a major corporation, was climbing the corporate ladder very quickly, but he was struggling with the ethics of his company in light of his Christian values and some of the things that he felt he had to do to get ahead. So we talked, and he came back a couple of weeks later, and he said, you know, Pastor, he said, if I have to lie and cheat and step on people to get ahead in my job, maybe it's time to look for a new job. Sometimes there comes a point at which we say, I'm not going to play by these rules anymore. I'm not going to play this game anymore. If I'm going to live with integrity, I need to change something. I need to sing a new song. I need to play a new game. And sometimes for us that means a change of vocation, a change of jobs, a change of relationships, a change in one's religious life, which can be a very, very difficult thing for us. We hear about peer pressure for teens and how incredibly difficult it is to keep on the straight and narrow. But the peer pressure we experience in this crazy culture, this tremendous cultural pressure to conform, to dance to the world's music, is so very, very difficult to fight. It makes it so difficult to take the road less traveled, to march to a different drum beat. But sometimes, some days, and maybe today for you, maybe it's one of those days, you're going to say, I'm going to start by changing my life. I'm going to start this day by dancing to the drum beat of God's love. I'm going to start today by doing what I can, by wanting what I have, and by being who I really am.